Thank you, Sarah, for hosting me. My name is Doron. I'm a Customer Success Manager based in Tel Aviv, in Israel. And today I'm going to talk about data risk analytics and integration with API and Syslog. Before I explain to you why I'm going to talk about it, it would be really interesting for me to understand, again, if you're willing to share in the chat, where are you at in the journey of integrating data risk analytics with API and Syslog? Are you only contemplating about it? Are you already within the journey with Syslog? Have you started development in API? It really interests me because this is a very exciting time for us regarding this. So if you could do that, that would be great. While I'm talking, and let me begin. So why did I decide to do this webinar from the beginning? First of all, because we in Imperva realized a while back that Syslog and API integration are very important for our DRA customers. We understood that people want to connect their environment and connect their systems together in order to have one synergetic system. We know some customers are using Seam, some using our SOAR. And we also got several requests from customers about using the API. And another personal reason for me for doing this is because a while back, there was a request from one of our customers to do something that was not already available for DRA. And I decided that API can be used in order to create it. And I played with it a little bit. I created a tool that I will share with you to show you the strength that APIs have. Therefore, I encourage you to think out of the box, and using those API can do amazing things. That's personally why I thought this is really exciting, and that is why I decided to do this webinar. So as said, we are integrating it to adhere to the modern DevOps of automation. I will show you several use cases of how we use our Syslog and the API. Sorry, these are the integration points I'm going to talk about, Syslog and API. And I'm going to share with you several use cases. It would be then interesting to see if you have use cases, other use cases. Then I will go deeper into how you use Syslog, how do we use the API, and then a very quick walkthrough of the DRA reporter to show you how easy it is to implement tools with the API. It will be a technical discussion, as was noted in the description of this webinar. So bear with me. If you have any questions, of course, you can ask them. And Sarah, if you see any questions on the chat, it would be very helpful if you let me know, because I'm looking at the screen and not at the chat.
Sure, no problem.
That's the background. Let's begin. Let's talk a little bit about use cases that we have discovered and understood talking with our customers. The first use case is that the DRA sends Syslog messages into the Seam system. Someone from the SOC will get the information from the Syslog, and then using API, and yeah, we have customers that also use the GUI in order to do these things, but here I am more focused about the API. And then the SOC engineer makes a decision, for example, that they want to close an incident or open an incident, and they use the integration with the API in order to do so. The reason that they're doing it is that in some cases, they do not want to provide access to the DRA GUI, or they want to use their own, let's call it, private systems without making a fuss of managing one more thing. So this is the first use case. It's quite simple. The other use case that we see in the field is that the DRA sends Syslog messages to the Seam. The SOC engineer gets that information, looks at it, and in some cases also enriches it with other information coming from other sources. And then the SOC engineer does not do the investigation, asks the application owner or the security engineer to investigate and handle this incident or the incidents that have been received. And the application owner or security engineer, again, uses the API in order to, after they make the decision what's need to be done, in order to close, to start, to reopen an incident, whatever they make and they decide after their investigation. The other use case, again, is for the DRA to send Syslog messages into a SOAR, which is a workflow manager. The SOC team will see that information and again, gather more information coming from other sources, and then decide whether they want to open a case and assign it to a specific application owner or security engineer. Of course, through the SOAR mechanism, making sure that the flow is working correctly, etc., etc. And the application owner or security engineer will then, using the API, manage the incidents in DRA. They can make a decision to create allow lists or close or reopen an incident per their discretion. Another kind of use case that we know is happening is when a new user arrives into, for example, the security team, and they want to give that user the ability to go into the DRA GUI and investigate things like an incident responder or an application owner. That user will get a specific set of IP addresses that he is or she is responsible for. So the IT will go to the Active Directory using an API or something, and then afterwards, when they set the correct user with the correct permission in the correct user group of DRA, they will also use the script in order to configure that user for the specific IP addresses that they're allowed to view. One more use case, and after the use cases, I will stop for a minute for questions, is that the DRA will send Syslog messages to SIEM, and the manager will then want to get some reports about it. How many incidents were opened, how many were closed, and other types of statistics. What kind of incidents were open? And the manager will have that. Of course, this can be part of the other use cases. You just put the manager on the side and add the relevant functionality for reports. And one more thing that's been implemented is management reports using the API. And this is the DRA reporter I discussed, and this was something that I've written before we bought our Sonar platform that can provide reports by themselves. But again, this is a really great example of how we can use APIs in order to create stuff that was not there before. Right. So let's dive a little bit deeper. DRA Syslog. So we realized again that Syslog is something that is used by our customers. Again, we have greatly enhanced the capabilities in the previous DRA version and in this version of DRA 4.0. We know that customers send reports to SIEM, to SOAR, to ELK, and even other platforms. I'd love to know if anyone uses it for other things, but these are the use cases that we know about. And what kind of configuration can we have in the Syslog? I will go in a minute into the DRA screen itself, but we set the target server with the IP port and protocol. We send which kind of events we want to send to the Syslog, and I will show it in a minute. And we decide what kind of notifications we want to get. And we have several message formats. We have the raw that is suitable for SIEM vendors such as Splunk and others. We have Ceph, that's the common event format for vendors such as HP ArcSight. We have Leaf, which is what IBM uses. And we have a new type of message available from DRA version 4, which is JSON. This is where we set the Syslog notifications in DRA. When we open the DRA, we go to the system notifications. We have email notifications, and we have Syslog notifications. When we select, the default is with no Syslog messages or Syslog notifications, and when we press this, we have the ability to configure what we want. First of all, we can set the host and the port. the protocol, the facility of the Syslog. Syslog has different types of facilities, and it is suggested to send a test Syslog message to see that you're actually connected to your Syslog. Another thing that you can set is which kinds of events you want to send to the Syslog. This is something quite new that we've added. I think it's in version 3.2. We can send breach detection notification or risk reduction notifications. If we go here, we can see which types of incidents are for breach, which types of incidents are set for risk. You can change this, but this way you can make a decision what you want to send to the Syslog. And here you can decide what you want to send. You can send issues notification, and you can set the format. Like I said, we have 4 types of format. You can see in the help, it's hard to see here, but here we have the actual messages and the placeholders that are set in those messages. And if you go into the help, you'll see what each of those placeholders mean. So we can decide if it's raw or Ceph or leaf or JSON. We can decide if we want to send Syslog from which priority. Low is everything, critical is only critical, high is high and critical, etc. We can decide to send news incidents. We can decide to send a message when incidents are closed. And we can send messages when incidents are reopened. So you have the choice to decide what you want to send and in what message format, and to where you want to send it. Are there any questions about this part?
Hi, Doron. A question came in just before you started this section. I'm not sure whether you'll address it here or not, but how can DRA be used to detect data exfiltration?
Data exfiltration. Well, that's a little bit outside of the aspect, but you can take a look at the types of the incidents that DRA has and the explanation. You can look into the help file or into the documentation that DRA has and see if there's something that fits your requirement. If it does not fit your requirement, and I will touch that a little bit later, but we can say that right now, you can always open a feature request. I will show you how for Imperva with a request for a new type of incident, and then our product team will take a look and see if and how and when it can be put into our roadmap.
Thank you, Doron. We've just had one additional question on that. Does Imperva have any DRA playbooks that can assist in creating use cases?
So, great question. And you know what? I will move just a little bit from what I wanted to show, but this is a good question. If you go to the online help, you know what? I will just, excuse me for a second. If we take a specific event, incident, for example, and we go to the online help, understanding incidents. When you look in the help, and you can also find it in the online documentation, for each of the different incident types, you can see what it means, what the implications, what to look for, and what are the exceptions. And from these things, you can actually build playbooks on how to deal with them. I hope that's something that makes sense and it's clear. So we have all these things, and you can build playbooks using that information that you find in the help file.
Thanks, Doron. That we've got a yes from there from the questions.
Excellent. Great.
There's been one extra question for data exfiltration. Look at excessive data retrieval, but that would not catch low and slow data retrieval. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, low and slow, I'm not sure that we have, I don't remember the exact algorithms that we use. If it's low and slow, and if it is undetected, it can be a problem. But if this is a user that has not done this before, it will, and I hope that I am absolutely correct, there will be an incident that will come up of the user is taking information that they never did before. Basically, the DRA works on a baseline. So if the user did do it and did take the information and it's slow and slow and he continues slowly taking information which he has accessed before, an incident might not be triggered. But if they go into new data and the new databases that are usually not there. Again, I don't want to be 100%. I cannot be 100% sure of what I'm saying right now. So let me get back to you in that. That's the more important thing. I will respond to you in the community in a post.
Yeah, I've just realised that's one of the other users was trying to provide a little bit of clarity for one of the previous questions. So
yeah, that's absolutely. I understand.
Perfect. Sure. Okay, there's nothing new for now. If you want to continue on, thanks, Doron.
Sure. So just so you can see, this is how a raw message looks like, and how a ceph message look like, and the leaf message look like. For us, it looks almost the same, but the consuming machines will know what to do with it. And this is the new JSON message format that we're using right now. Another important thing that I would like to discuss is the fact that when sending information into Syslog in order to build playbooks and to build case management, etc., you need to consider whether you want to use the issues as the input for that information. And the reason is that the issues, when they are created once, but when they change and more incidents are added, for example, if they are not created, again, a syslog message will not be created. It is really important to say, and I should have said it before, that issues are a huge help when you work with your GUI, because then you reduce the amount of information that you need to deal with. You look into the issues page and you see a lot less things that you need to take care of. It reduces alarm fatigue. But if you're looking at feeding this information into your SIEM and into your SOAR, issues is not the right thing to use. Use the incidents. So that's something that you should take care of when you're thinking about the playbooks and how to use it. Again, for GUI, it's amazing. If you go into the GUI, it makes everything so clear. But if you use external systems, consider not to use the issues, but use the incidents. So let's talk about DRA API. So as I said, DRA API allows you to enhance the DRA capabilities, uses secure communication, and it's backward compatible. And one more point to say is that it, of course, allows you to connect with external systems, so you don't need to log in. Users won't need to log into the GUI if this is something that you want to do. The API is an HTTP REST API. It uses SSL and secure communication, and of course, it uses the standard get, put, post, and delete functionality. We have 3 versions. We have V1, which is the first version. We have V1.2, which is available since DRA 3.2 with extended functionality. Again, this is where we started to extend our functionality. And we have V2, which is new from DRA 4. And this is the recommended version. And the reason is that we made a decision to build our API in the same standards and manners that we're using right now in the Imperva Cloud WAF. It is a much better methodology. It's much more robust and is more connected with the REST standards. So if you have not started to develop your APIs, I would suggest that before you do that, you upgrade to DRA version 4.0 and start using V2 and not V1 and not V1.2. If you look at the documentation, you will see that the APIs for V1.2 and V2.0 are the same, but the V2 has more things. And in the future, we will probably use the V2 or enhancements of V2. So start using the V2 and not the previous APIs. The DRA API communication is secure. We use SSL. The authorization is done through the Active Directory. I will show you in a minute. And we use the HTTP basic authentication strategy. And the way we use it is we have a DRA user and DRA password in our Active Directory. This is the string that we take, DRA .DRA password, and then we encode it in base 64. So this is a base 64, it's something in the internet. So if I have a username called AB .password, I encode it, and this is what I use for my basic authentication. If you look into Postman, this is a standard tool for API developers. You can see that the header is one of the things that is added to the header is, let me find it, authorization basic, and this is encoding of base 64 of the username .password. This is an example of how our Active Directory looks like. It's hard to see, but there is a group called counterbreach_API. When you add your users and you want to have the ability for them to connect with our API, they have to be under this group. So again, this is an example. We have the API user who is connected under the counterbreach API and others. This name can be changed. As long as this fits what's in your Active Directory, that's fine. If you look a little bit closer, you will see that there are other kinds of DRA. Counterbreach, by the way, is the previous name of DRA, of application owners and incident responders and admins. This is used for our other roles within the GUI, but this is what's interesting for us right now. Counterbreach API. If you want the user to be able to connect, you will use that. Then you will use the username .password, encode it in base 64, send it via HTTPS to your DRA system, and you can work with it. So this is the basics of the API details. I'm going to use mostly as an example the DRA API .20 format. You see these yellow things is part of what was added in the DRA API. You can have log before, you can have a limit, you can have an offset. In V1 and V1.2, it was not available. You can also see that the names have been changed, DRA instead of counterbreach. This is cosmetics, but this implies that you are using the new API. The SSL port we're using is 8443. The headers, as I've explained to you, is the basic authentication string. And responses, we have also enhanced the responses coming back from DRA in version 2.0. So one more reason why we want to use 2.0. So 200 is okay, and we have 40 asterisks for other errors, and within that, we have a JSON giving another number and some sort of explanation what the problem is. And here below are examples of how the format looks like for 2.0 and for the others. We have three types of resources that can be used in our API. We have the security events. And then when we're talking about security events, this is the incidents. We also have anomalies, but it's not really used. So mostly you guys will work with incidents. We have permissions, which is related to users. And we have the allow list rules. Once it was called whitelists, but we've changed it to be allow lists. So we have APIs in order to manage, create, and delete the whitelist. Let's talk a bit about security events, and I will also show you an example why this is a demo. This is the incident ID. It's 1039. And we see it's open, and we don't see any comment. When we go into Postman, so this is the get, where you can get the information about the incident. And you can filter it only open, only closed, etc., etc. So you can get the events and the information. There are more APIs to bring more information in regarding a specific incident. We didn't put everything in one because there's a lot of information. So this is basically giving a list with some of the information. And if we want to change, and this is the 1039, remember, I want to star it and I want to close it and I want to put an API comment. So when I set it and press send, you see that the return is 200 OK. The information is coming here. And if we look into our DRA, we can see that it was closed and a comment was added to the incident. That is about the security events. Again, you have a lot of other stuff that you can do, but mostly this is the most basic things. Closing and opening, starring and adding comments. These are the security event types. They are different from the names themselves, but you can get it as part of the API, and you can see in the documentation what is the corresponding type with the incident type name. And as you can see, there is no issue management with API. It's incidents. So another type of API is the permissions. It's the user permissions. In this kind of API, we can control the users and what they're allowed to do, their permissions. And let's see an example. So we have a bunch of application owners in our Active Directory. Remember, we set the users in the Active Directory. Now we want to tell the system that the user Doron API, Doron app.Tzur is permitted for a specific IP address. So how do we do that? Very simple. First of all, we can see in the API, can do a get and see the information that we've seen in the GUI in the API. Here, this is it, 10.10.31. And then what we do is we just I'm going to add another IP address and a comment. By the way, if you want to add comments, you need, first of all, to get the information, append the information, only then send it. It's not being added, it's replacing the information in the database. So now we have added the information, and if we go to our GUI, we can see the comment that was added, and we can see the IP address that was added. We can also control the configuration of these, but I'm not going to show it. I mean, we can do that. For application owners, we can make a decision if they will receive and be able to handle breach detections, risk detections, and will they be able to configure allow lists. So this is something that can be done. We don't change in the API the overall, but we change it here. And again, the users are defined in the Active Directory. They have to be defined there before you can actually configure the information on them.
Trevor, would you be happy to speak if I unmute you, or would you rather?
Yeah.
Okay, one moment. I'm going to unmute you here.
What does DRA analyze? So where does it get its data from directly?
Oh, okay, I understand. What the DRA does, it gets information from the Secure Sphere system, our data activity monitoring system, and we provide it with information, with audit information coming from the monitoring system, which monitors databases. And based on the information it receives, it knows how to analyze, and using machine learning and big data, it makes decision of what kind of behavior is an expected behavior, and when there are things that are not expected, it will raise incidents. If you know them, you set relevant counter breach policies. There are default policies. You set them to specific destination where the DRA analytics machine sits, and then the DRA analytics will know how to crunch it, build the baseline, and then start providing inputs and insights. Allow lists, or what was once whitelists, we can configure those via API as well. And we can give as an example. It's called ignore list, the API. This is a get where you can see the information coming. And we can also add a new one. For example, I'm setting a rule called rule generated from API. And once I send it, and we have an OK created. This is a post request. If we look at the GUI, we can see that a new rule has been generated. Now, bear in mind that when you use the API, read the API manual, read also about the responses, error responses, because this will help you understand the logic of how to build and call the APIs. In some cases, when you create a new rule, for example, in the allow list, you will get a 400 response because the rule does not adhere to some of the requirements. When you read the documentation, read not only the explanation about the API, but the explanations about the error codes themselves, and you will get a very clear understanding on how it works and what is actually required. So I'm going to take the DRA reporter only as an example of really how you can think out of the box and build things that are not created yet. And this was a request that came from some of my customers saying at the time that we do not have executive reports that can be sent to our executives and show what DRA is doing, what is the progress or not. And at the time, I understood that there is some really cool APIs, and I decided to build a very simple tool. I would like to let you know as well that we have an Imperva GitHub. That is a repository of open source code. You can find code not only for our on-prem solutions, but for our cloud. And it's a really cool place to take the information. You can use it. You can use it as a reference. You can tweak it and reverse engineer it and do whatever you want. That's the whole idea of open source. Bear in mind that those tools are not supported by Imperva, and if you have any problems, you can open a ticket within the GitHub, and if possible, it will be taken care of, but on the other side, you can fix it yourself if you want. So I wrote this tool in Node.js. I used the API 3.1 and 3.2, and what I did was, and I'm just gonna show you, I wrote a very simple code. It took me maybe a couple of weeks here and there as a background task. And what it did, it used the get incident information from DRA in order to create a simple HTML that shows the number of events that were opened in the last 7 weeks and overall opens and closed. I also created CSV files that can be then fed into other sources, other applications, and you can build graphs out of them. And again, this was a really very cool system. It was quite easy, and it's something that was built outside of the box. So when you think about things that you need, you can, of course, open feature requests and ask for things. But if you have the API and you have the patience and someone who is passionate about writing code, you can always build some really cool tools as well. The output, like I showed you, is an HTML file and some CSV summaries, and based on that, you can create graphs through Excel. I've created that. It's in the Imperva GitHub tool, a tool that's called DRA Reporter. And my next thing that I want to do is add it as a Docker. so customers can use it even easier. And I'm looking for beta customers. If anyone is interested to use this tool and to use it, first of all, they can take it directly. And if you're looking to deploy it with Docker, let me know. I really want to make sure that it works before I put it in the GitHub repository. So reach out to me and I will be very happy. Questions?
The enterprise I'm part of uses SIEM heavily. Can incident or uses generated be closed via SIEM?
Via SIEM?
Yeah.
In order to close them in DRA, you will need to use the API or use the GUI. This is the integration part. SIEM is not DRA. You can close them with SIEM, but they will remain open in your DRA system. You can also, one of the important things that you can also do with DRA is you can create ignore lists or allow lists in order to filter and tweak your systems. If you do it via SIEM, DRA will always spit that information. But if you want to really stop it at the source, you better define allow lists in your DRA. This also reduces the cost of SIEM because less logs go into it. And SIEM does sometimes you pay for the number of log messages going in. So my recommendation is to tweak your system via the allow list, either directly via GUI or like I've showed you, you have the API to do it.
For management reporting, the main page of the GUI shows a count of databases. Management would ask for details of what is covered. Info can be retrieved using SQL, but can that be built into reporting?
If you're talking about the database names, you can use the DRA API. There is an API, but you can build a report with that information and provide your management with a list of databases that have incidents on them. Again, this is incidents that have been created. We don't know the name of the database if an incident was not created on it. So as I've mentioned, we are in the journey of providing more and more functionality, and we know that customers are in the journey of using Syslog and API, and I see by the amount of people here that it is very interesting. It is very interesting for us to hear from you if there is anything missing. I mean, we can think of all sorts of ideas of missing information or missing APIs, but at the end of the day, it's you guys in the field that are using our product, and you will know more and have more use cases than we can imagine. ImpervaUserVoice.com is where you can add new feature requests, and when you add them, it goes to our product team. Our product team examines this information every once in a while, and based on different decisions, if we can call it that, decide if a feature will be taken or not. And if you open a user voice, you will receive notifications saying, for example, that this feature request has been accepted and it's under consideration. And sometimes you can even get a rejected. But that this way, when you use this system, you will know. Another important thing about the system is that you can look for other feature requests that other customers have put in and put your vote. If there is something that you really think is cool, use this not only for DRA and not only for API and Syslog, but for other things as well.
We've had one more question, Doron.
Yeah.
Is there any document regarding troubleshooting the issues when working with API?
Troubleshooting the issues. The API documentation is quite comprehensive. The API is not very difficult to use. So yeah, we do have, let me see if I can find it. Here we go. The DRA documentation portal. We have the REST API overview, and we have here the URL structure. We have the way we do the authentication. basic authorization, etc. How we use it here. This is the username dot password encoded in basic64, and what will be the response if you don't have it. The high-level HTTP return codes, and with the resources, we have the security event in APIs, the permission, and the allow list rules. And if we talked about databases, get incident database names is an API, so that this is 1.2, but use the 2.0. You can, for example, create the list of all your incident IDs and then call this API in order to get the database names. And once you get those database names, you can create a report for it. That answers one of the questions that was asked. So you can see all the information here regarding the APIs. Does this answer your question?
Yeah, that's good.
Excellent. So thank you very much for being here. I hope that you understand some more about Syslog and about API integration with DRA and a bit more about DRA. As a reminder, if you have any missing functionality, please use our user voice. And if you're interested in running the DRA reporter on a Docker, reach out to me and we can work together. It's very simple to use, and I would be really glad if you do it. And if you just want to run it, you can take it from the Imperva GitHub and use it.
I'd like to thank Doron for joining us for this webinar and for providing such great information. It's been really interesting. I'd like to thank you all for your time. It's great to have had so many questions throughout the session. It really helps everyone to get a better understanding of the products. And please keep an eye out for other upcoming events. And yeah, we'll be sure to see you all again soon.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Sarah, for hosting me, and take care.
We'll see you soon. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.